Every individual on this planet is granted the same 24 hours. That is the one commonality between the most influential executive and the most burdened learner. The clock is indifferent to who you are. It does not accelerate for the driven nor decelerate for the hesitant. Yet, when we observe those who are genuinely triumphant, not just affluent but content, impactful, and vibrant, we see they appear to experience their 24 hours uniquely. There is a serene self-assurance about them, a path, a lucidity that remains unwavering despite external chaos or distractions. It is not that they possess more time, but that they commence with something most overlook. They start with purpose. When we discuss purpose, we are not referring to objectives or schemes, but to a fundamental reason beneath the actions, something more profound than a checklist. Most individuals awaken and immediately check their phones, plunging into the day's demands without questioning their significance. They rush, but often in circles, responding to emails, attending gatherings, handling chores, yet retire wondering why they still feel behind and unfulfilled. That is because motion is not equivalent to advancement, and activity is not synonymous with accomplishment. Without a clear purpose, effort becomes draining instead of invigorating. Successful individuals initiate their day differently, not with haste but with intent, not with clamor but with clarity. Before they act, they align. Before they plan, they center. They recognize that their most precious asset is not time but direction. When you understand your purpose, every moment becomes more significant. It is the distinction between completing a task and contributing to a mission, between occupying your schedule and fulfilling your purpose. People frequently inquire, how do I become more productive? However, that is the incorrect question. Productivity is merely efficiency. It addresses the method. If you have not determined your purpose, you are merely improving at tasks that may not be important, which is not success, but exhaustion masquerading as progress. True success begins by posing more challenging questions. Why does this matter to me? Why is this work significant? Why am I dedicating my life to this? Nobody genuinely leads a life anchored in these questions, whether they are constructing a business, guiding a family, or pursuing a craft. They awaken with something drawing them forward, not pushing them. There is a difference. Being pushed implies attempting to prove something. Being pulled signifies discovering something worth following. When you have a robust purpose, you do not require daily motivation. Motivation is fleeting, but meaning fuels discipline. Meaning sustains you through resistance, fatigue, and failure. Meaning imparts weight to every second and direction to every hour. Consider the most successful individuals you admire, those who inspire and challenge you, who live with rare certainty. You will find they do not chase time or race against the clock. They align with it. They are not asking how much they can accomplish today, but what they wish to contribute. This question only makes sense when anchored in your purpose. Your purpose does not need to be world-altering. It merely needs to be authentic. It could be constructing a future for your children, creating something novel, aiding others, learning, healing, teaching, or growing. Your purpose is unique to you, but it must be lived, not someday, not when convenient, but now, in how you begin your morning, respond to the next email, or say yes or no. Your purpose empowers these minor decisions. That is what successful individuals understand. The small things matter more when they point to something greater.
A person without a purpose is like a boat without a rudder. They will drift wherever the wind takes them, feeling busy but aimless, tired but unaccomplished. However, someone with a purpose may still encounter storms and be knocked off course, but they always return because they know their destination and identity. That is the essence of leadership, not instructing others, but demonstrating a purposeful life. The only way to achieve this is to start with purpose. It is easy to become engrossed in the rush, measuring success by accomplishments, speed, and checked boxes. However, none of that matters if it is not tied to something meaningful. Do not just fill your day, fill it with meaning, values, and vision. Take 10 minutes each morning, not to scroll or plan, but to remember why you started, why you care, why this day matters. If you do not define it, the world will, and the world is full of distractions but lacks direction. Success is not about having more time, but being more connected to the time you have. It is about being so grounded in your purpose that the world's chaos cannot shake you. No matter the interruptions, you return to your center and purpose. In doing so, you lead not because of a title or position, but because your life exemplifies clarity in motion. Before chasing the next goal, strategy, or productivity hack, pause and ask yourself the question most are too busy to consider: why am I doing this? If you can answer honestly, you will find that time no longer controls you. You begin to control time, and that is when everything changes. If you ask most people what they need more of, they will say time. If only I had more hours in the day, they lament. But time is not the issue. We all have 24 hours, the most democratic resource on Earth. You cannot buy more, slow it down, or fast forward it. Yet some people accomplish more in their 24 hours than others, not because they manage time better, but because they manage their energy differently. It is easy to believe that success is about time management, that if we wake up earlier, schedule tighter, and multitask better, we will finally get ahead. But the truth is, it does not matter how full your calendar is if you are exhausted. You can block out your day minutely, but if your mind is scattered and your heart is not in it, you are merely going through the motions. Activity without energy is like driving without fuel. You make noise and look busy, but go nowhere. Truly successful people do not just ask, "What do I need to do today?" They ask, "When am I at my best to do it?" They have learned to listen to their body, mind, and rhythms. They understand that energy is not infinite. It is a resource that needs protection, restoration, and focus. Not every hour is equal. A fully focused, energized hour can be worth more than 5 hours of scattered busyness. Consider your own day. When are you most alert, creative, and focused? Most people know this intuitively, but do not plan around it. They schedule meetings during peak hours and save meaningful work for when they are tired, wasting fresh energy on trivial tasks and wondering why they can't progress on what matters. Successful people reverse this. They match their most valuable work to their highest energy moments, giving their best energy to their best priorities. This is not about working harder, but smarter, realizing that your brain at 9 a.m. is different from your brain at 4 p.m. Deep thinking requires different presence than answering emails. Creating something meaningful, writing, designing, strategizing requires mental clarity, not just calendar time. They protect that space, guarding high-energy hours like sacred ground, not out of rigidity, but because they know how they show up is more important than how long they show up.
When energy dips, they do not pretend it does not matter or guilt themselves into pushing through. They rest, step away, and recharge, understanding that rest is not the opposite of productivity, but its foundation. Just as a muscle grows not during the list but during recovery, the mind sharpens not in constant use but in intentional pause. They do not work burnout as a badge of honor, but see it as a signal, a reminder that even the most purpose-driven life needs renewal rhythms. There is a myth in our culture that busyness equates to value, that a packed calendar signifies importance. However, the most successful people do not let the world define their worth by exhaustion. They measure impact, not hours, results, not rush, presence, not just performance. They do not attempt everything, but choose what matters most, giving it their full, focused energy. This takes courage because the world constantly demands more, rewards overextension, applauds hustle, and glamorizes grind. But at what cost? Drained leaders cannot lead well. Exhausted creators cannot create deeply. Worn-down people do not build lasting legacies. You cannot give what you do not have. That is why the best leaders prioritize energy, not selfishly but strategically, knowing their energy is not just for themselves but fuels the teams they lead, the families they love, and the missions they carry. This shift from time to energy is subtle but everything. It moves you from control to connection, from pressure to purpose. You stop trying to squeeze more in and start asking, what is worth giving my energy to today? This question changes how you wake up, what you say yes to, how you work, rest, and show up, not just for tasks, but for life. When you observe successful people, it is not just what they do that stands out, but how they do it. They bring presence, clarity, focus, and passion, shifting the atmosphere not by being louder or faster, but by being fully there. You cannot fake that energy. It comes from alignment, living in tune with values, honoring rhythms, knowing when to push and pause. This is not about becoming superhuman, but more human, more aware, intentional, and in tune with the life you are building, not just the work you are doing. Life is not just about getting things done, but becoming someone along the way. The version of you the world needs most is fully alive, energized, and engaged. So, the next time you feel stretched thin, overwhelmed, or scattered, do not just look at your schedule. Examine your energy. Where is it going? What is draining it? What is renewing it? You cannot manage time, it keeps moving, but you can manage how you show up in the time you have, and that is the difference between surviving the day and owning it. The people who make the biggest impact are not those with the most time, but those who have learned to protect, direct, and invest their energy purposefully. There is a quiet difference between those who live intentionally and those who merely survive the day. It does not always show in their attire or possessions, but in their demeanor, the calm, clarity, and sense that they are not rushing to catch up, but moving with purpose. This difference begins before the world sees them, starting the moment they wake up. Successful individuals do not leave their days to chance. They design them carefully and intentionally, changing everything. Most people wake up and immediately step into reaction mode. The alarm rings and they are already behind. Emails, notifications, obligations pulling at them before their feet hit the floor. Their first thoughts are about what they must do, who they must answer to, and what might go wrong. Their day owns them before they start. They don't design their day, they defend it minute by minute from interruption and overload. At the end, they collapse into bed wondering why it all feels like a blur. They were busy, but was any of it meaningful?
Now, imagine someone who begins their day not in a rush, but with rhythm, not grabbing their phone first, but grounding themselves in something deeper. A moment of silence, a journal entry, a thought of gratitude, or a quiet breath before the noise begins. They take a few minutes to ask, what matters today? What kind of person do I want to be when I walk into that meeting, lead that call, or greet my family at the end of the day? These are not just time management questions, but leadership questions, asked not once a year at a retreat, but every morning. Successful people do not let the day set their tone, they set the tone for the day. That is the power of design, not control or rigidity, but alignment, deliberately choosing what gets your time, energy, and focus. If you do not choose, someone else will, and not all demands are equal. Not every request is worthy of your attention. Not every fire needs your intervention. Designing your day starts with clarity about what matters most, not in theory but in practice. What moves the mission forward, aligns with your values, and brings out your best. When you know that, everything else becomes easier to filter. You are not just reacting to urgency, but responding to purpose. That is the mindset shift, not doing more, but doing what matters most and doing it well. High performers, those who consistently make an impact without burning out, have rituals, anchors, and structures that create space for focus. They do not wing it or rely on last-minute adrenaline. They build systems reflecting their values, perhaps a morning block for deep work with no meetings or distractions, a daily review checking progress, not just tasks, or a moment of stillness before a challenging conversation. These habits are not just about efficiency, but identity, reinforcing who they want to be, not just what they want to achieve. Life happens, plans shift, the unexpected arises. Designing your day is not about perfection, but intention, having a map even if the route changes. When you know your destination, you are less likely to get lost in the noise or pulled into someone else's crisis. You are more likely to respond with clarity instead of panic. That is real confidence, not arrogance, but alignment, knowing you have chosen your day rather than letting the day choose you. There is something deeper at work here. When you design your day, you are not just organizing your schedule, but honoring your life. Acknowledging that your time is valuable, your energy finite, and your presence, creativity, and leadership deserve protection and careful direction. You stop seeing your calendar as a list of obligations and start viewing it as a reflection of your priorities. This shift changes how you feel at the end of the day. Instead of drained, you feel fulfilled, not because everything went perfectly, but because you showed up with purpose. Most people do not live this way, not because they can, but because they have never been taught. They have been taught to hustle, say yes, and keep up, but no one asks them, what does a well-designed day look like for you? No one tells them, you have the right to protect your time. You have the ability to choose where your focus goes. So they drift, react, and survive. But successful people live differently, starting each day like a builder, with blueprints, not random bricks and chaos, but with vision. They see their time as a canvas, not just a container, knowing every hour is a chance to create something new: clarity, connection, momentum, peace. They are not waiting for the perfect day, but designing it one choice at a time. That design becomes a habit, and that habit becomes a culture, not just in their own life, but in the lives of those they lead. When you model intentionality, it gives others permission to do the same. When you live with purpose, it ripples outward. People follow not just your words, but your rhythm, calm, and clarity. That is lasting leadership, not just loud, but aligned. If you want to do more than just get through the day, if you want to lead, create, and thrive, do not start with your to-do list. Start with your design. Ask yourself what kind of day leads to the life you want to build. Then make small, simple decisions bringing that day to life. Do that enough, and you will not just have better days, but a better story, one you wrote, one day at a time. We live in a world celebrating agreement, saying yes to every opportunity, meeting, project, and request, being available, agreeable, and accommodating. But if you look closely at truly successful people, those creating lasting impact and living with clarity and peace, they live by a different rule. They say no more often than most are willing, not because they are cold, arrogant, or difficult, but because they understand something essential. Every yes is a no to something else. Time is finite, energy is limited, focus is fragile. Saying yes to something meaningless often means saying no to something deeply important. Successful people do not see no as rejection, but as a boundary, a choice, a filter protecting what matters most. They have learned that saying no is not selfish, but an act of leadership. We say yes because we want to be helpful, liked, and seen as reliable. There is nothing wrong with supporting others, but saying yes too much betrays your own priorities. You fill your calendar with others' goals, stretch yourself thin, wake up each morning already behind and overwhelmed, and run all day, wondering by night why you feel like nothing meaningful was accomplished. It is because you did not own your day, you loaned it out. The most grounded, focused, and fulfilled individuals are not those who do the most, but those who do the right things with excellence. To achieve that, they must choose, commit, and make space. You cannot pursue what matters if constantly pulled by what does not. You cannot create something meaningful if your attention is scattered across 100 small obligations. Excellence requires focus, and focus requires saying no. When you say no, you create space for depth, room to breathe, and allow your best energy to flow toward your best work. More importantly, you make a statement about what you stand for, telling the world and yourself that your time has value, your life has direction, and not every opportunity is worth your attention or every request deserves your yes. When you live this way, people begin to trust your yes because it comes from integrity, not obligation. Saying no does not have to be harsh. It can be respectful and kind, but must be clear. A vague no is just a delayed yes. Successful people learn to say no with confidence, not guilt, knowing guilt is not a good compass. Guilt leads to pleasing, not leading. Real leadership requires decisions not everyone will understand, and that is okay. You were not meant to live for everyone's approval, but to live aligned with your purpose. Every time you say yes, you plant a seed, committing your time, energy, and attention. The question is that seed worth watering? Is it connected to your values? Does it move the mission forward and serve the bigger picture of the life you are building? If the answer is no, you already know what to do. The courage comes in doing it. Saying no does not always feel good. It can be uncomfortable, disappointing, and feel like letting someone down. But every no protecting your purpose is a yes to your future. Over time, that discipline builds a life of substance, not just speed, of meaning, not just movement. People often look at successful individuals and assume they are doing everything, managing it all, juggling without dropping anything. But if you peek behind the curtain, you see something else. They are not doing everything, they are doing less but better. They have learned the art of essentialism and mastered focused living. That is not accidental, but intentional. They have learned that every great yes must be defended by 1,000 no's, because greatness is not in how many things you touch, but how deeply you invest in the few things that matter. Often, the path to extraordinary impact is paved with ordinary decisions to protect your time, energy, and attention. Not someday, but today, in small, quiet moments when you choose to stay focused, present, and true to what matters. We have been taught to be polite, agreeable, and accommodating, but being nice and clear are not the same. One earns short-term approval, the other builds long-term trust. The people who respect you most will not be those you always said yes to, but those who saw you live with purpose, lead with intention, and were unafraid to say no. The reality is, if you want to make an impact, you will have to make trade-offs. You cannot be everyone, please everyone, or do everything. But you can do the things that matter, build something lasting, and live with intention. It starts with the courage to choose, define success on your own terms, and guard it not with walls but with wisdom. The next time you feel the urge to say yes, pause and ask yourself, what is this costing me? Is this aligned with who I want to become? Is this worth my energy, time, and life? If the answer is no, say it with love, clarity, and without apology. Your life deserves more than constant reactivity. It deserves direction. That direction begins every time you choose what to let in and what to let go. There is something deeply human about looking forward. We are wired for progress, possibility, and imagining what could be. We create goals, set deadlines, and chase the next thing with energy and ambition. Forward thinking has always been a marker of growth. But if you study truly successful people, not just busy or popular, but grounded and fulfilled, you notice they do not just measure success by what is ahead, but by looking back. They take time to reflect, remember, and revisit how far they have come, because success is not just about the next mountain, but honoring the climb that got them there. The forward view is necessary, it gives vision and keeps us moving. But without the backward view, we lose perspective, forget our growth, minimize progress, and fall into the trap of never feeling enough, no matter our achievements. The moment we reach one goal, another appears, the finish line moves, the pressure continues. Without reflection, we start believing we are always behind. Truly successful people, those who lead with confidence and live with peace, have learned the art of measuring backward. They stop, pause, and ask, where was I a year ago, 6 months ago, last week? They do not just measure results, but growth, tracking lessons, not just milestones. They remember who they used to be to appreciate who they are becoming. This habit of intentional backward reflection does something powerful. It grounds and centers you, reminding you that progress is not always loud or flashy. Sometimes it looks like resilience, patience, and showing up on hard days when quitting would have been easier. It reminds you that growth is not always visible day to day, but becomes undeniable over time. That you survived things you thought might break you, built things from nothing, and changed not just what you do, but how you think, lead, and live. Success measured only by what is next is exhausting. It keeps you chasing and comparing, convincing you that happiness is always one step away. But when you measure backward, something changes. You start to see your life as a story in motion, not a sprint or a list of boxes to check, but a journey you are proud of. You find meaning in the path, not just the destination.
Think about the people you admire most, not just for their accomplishments, but for who they are. They are often not the ones with the flashiest titles or biggest headlines, but those who lead with depth, wisdom, and quiet confidence, born not from height, but from history. They have taken time to reflect, make sense of struggles, and harvest meaning from experiences. Your wisdom is not accidental, it is intentional, earned through reflection. When things go wrong, as they will, it is the habit of reflection that keeps you steady. When numbers drop, deals fall through, relationships end, or outcomes are not what you hoped for, measuring backward reminds you that you have recovered before, that this moment, while painful, is part of something larger, and that you are not defined by a single outcome, but by your ability to grow from it. Reflection also changes how you celebrate. When you measure backward, wins feel different, not just dopamine hits, but proof that effort mattered. That late nights, quiet sacrifices, and uncomfortable decisions were not wasted, but built something real. You see that success is not about one big leap, but 1,000 small steps, one brave decision at a time. There is another benefit. When you measure backward, you become a better leader. You do not just motivate with hype, but inspire with perspective, reminding people of their starting point, showing them their progress, and helping them see what they might miss. You celebrate not just wins, but growth, building trust and creating a culture valuing people, not just performance, seeing success as a journey, not just a result. Keep dreaming, planning, and looking ahead, but do not forget to look back. The story of your success is not just in where you are going, but in where you have been. The moments you almost gave up but did not. The lessons that hurt but shaped you. The quiet wins no one saw but you felt deeply. These moments are your foundation. When the road gets hard, and it will, those reflections remind you why it is worth it. We all want to make the most of our 24 hours, but success is not just in how much you do, but how deeply you live, how clearly you see the unfolding story, and how often you pause to appreciate the road behind you. When you measure backward, you carry your past with gratitude, your present with clarity, and your future with hope. That, more than any calendar or clock, is how truly successful people move forward.